one of the lines of logic that I hear from a progressive, a secularist, even a confused Christian at times is this sentiment that you can't be anti-abortion and pro-death penalty. That to be against abortion and in favor of some kind of capital punishment is itself illogical. And I find that claim to be illogical. I don't think that those two go against one another in the slightest. I think you're dealing with apples and oranges there. That's not to say that capital punishment should not be very, very carefully arrived at and thought through deeply. I don't think that it's something, that is the appropriate punishment for any old crime. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I don't think capital punishment and abortion are at odds with one another when it comes to being anti-abortion and in favor of capital punishment. Is this something at all that you've thought about?
Well, I think that I've seen that argument. I think that from a biblical perspective, it's if you shed someone's blood, your blood will be shed. So the idea is it's not a retribution. It's actually a valuing of life. So life is so precious that if you take another person's life, then you forfeit your own. And that places the highest possible valuation on life. So that from a biblical perspective, capital punishment is a valuing of life, and the idea being that it's also a deterrent. That if you withdraw the deterrent, you'll get a disregard for life, and innocent people will be killed. Whereas with abortion, it's simply, on our understanding, murder. It's capital punishment of the people who least deserve it. So I think I would turn the argument back and on its head against those people and say, look, you're proposing to execute capital punishment on the most innocent people on earth, and you're proposing to protect people from capital punishment who most deserve it. Where's the logic in that? That's how I would see it. And again, I agree with you. I mean, it's a court of last resort, capital punishment, and it requires a strong, fair, and impartial judicial system. Because if not, then you just kept people taken out and shot for any old reason, in dictatorships and so on, where the value of life is very cheap. But the logic of it, the logic of a pro-capital punishment, anti-abortion position, that is a logical position. The reverse is an illogical position. So right. That's how I see it.
To be pro-abortion and
pro-abortion and anti-capital punishment is the most illogical, ridiculous position to hold.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is there a biblical precedent for capital punishment in the New Testament? I mean, you cited, obviously, God's law for Israel, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, which I've understood as God's measure of protection so that justice was maintained in the sense that punishment never exceeded the crime. Mm-hmm. And in the New Testament, I think the passage that a lot of people think of is Romans 13, where Paul talks about how the government bears the sword. It does seem to me there like Paul is saying, whether he's implicitly stating it or explicitly talking about it, it seems that his frame of thinking, capital punishment is a just punishment when it's arrived at justly.
Well, yeah, that's clear, and I think it's Acts 26 where Paul is appearing before Festus and Agrippa and says, if I've done anything worthy of the death penalty, then I accept it. So he's saying he's happy to, not happy, but he's quite willing to
Yeah.
to the, so to speak, to the death penalty if he's done anything deserving it. So that was Paul's opinion. And you're right that when you set the Old Testament against contemporary law codes in the ancient Near East, it's the eye for an eye is a protective measure. But you also have to realize that the book of Revelation is shot through with an eye for an eye. It's something I never realized until I began to study Revelation, very seriously, number of years ago. And it's right there. You will die. You will receive the punishment that you've meted out to others. It's a consistent theme in Revelations, which indicates that it's something that is in God's conception of justice. And that's an eternal truth. So, and, I mean, what else is Paul saying in Galatians 6 when he says, you'll reap what you sow? It's an eye for an eye. And we know that that's what happens in life. We reap what we sow. So, if you reap, if you sow in the direction of taking the life of another person, then you reap the punishment for that. But in God's economy, that is a protection of life, not a diminishing of life.
Because it upholds the value of life in principle, not just in particular.